Shalom everybody, let's start the counting for the Ummah for tonight. ברוך אתה יהוה אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על ספירת האומר היום יום עזרים. Blessed are you, Yahuwah, Lord, King of the universe, who commanded us to count the Omer on this day, day 20.
Shalom, beloveds of the King. Praise Abba Yahuwah. As we continue our journey with Yirmiyahu, and the more we go deeper into Yirmiyahu, the more we realize how we need to be able to humble ourselves before the Father, how we understand the wicked time that we live in right now, to understand that when we more and more, as the Father takes me through Jeremiah, the more and more I am being able to see the end times and the book of Revelation unfolding itself, because this is about one nation that Abba's about to judge, but Revelation is when he's going to judge the nations of the world. And so at the end of the day, we must understand that the Father is opening up this book to us to make us understand what is coming. So just like Jeremiah had to stand and speak a word with authority and power to the people because they needed to understand Father's heart, so right now, Father is wanting to reveal his heart to us. And all I can say is that when I stand and work through this, I bow my head and say, oh, my Father, have mercy on my soul. Have mercy on me. Because the only thing that I can do is bow my head in shame and say, guilty as charged. And that's what we must understand. There isn't one that can stand and say, oh, I haven't partaken of that. We've all partaken of this. And that is why the Father is bringing a shaking. So let us read chapter 22 tonight. Thus said Yahuwah, go down to the house of the sovereign of Yehudah, and there you shall speak this word. And shall say, hear the word of Yahuwah, O sovereign of Yehudah, you who sit on the throne of David, and you and your servants and your people who enter these gates. Thus said Yahuwah, do right ruling. Here we go again. Do right ruling. So what is he saying? If you can do right ruling, he's wanting us to be able to do what is right in the eyes of the Father. He's wanting us to be able to keep the ways of the Father, do the right ruling. This is what he's requiring of us. And so he's saying, do right ruling and righteousness, and deliver him who is robbed out of the hand of the oppressor. Do not maltreat, nor do violence to the stranger, the fatherless, or the widow, nor shed innocent blood in this place. So if we really look and we see the stranger, we don't even want the foreigner in our own nation who is the stranger. But I know that the Father still said to me many, many years ago, he said to me, he's bringing the stranger into our nation so that they are going to come here and they're going to catch a fire, and then they will be sent forth to be able to go and speak the truth that they will receive here. But we don't always want the stranger amongst us, because we are a people that is about ourselves. And so if the stranger comes and the stranger wants to learn the ways of Yahuwah, then why should he? If he joins himself to your will, we read Isaiah 56, if he loves the name of Yahuwah and wants to keep the ways of Yahuwah and keep his commands, then why should we not embrace them? But you see, now in the land of Israel, we have to convert to a religion called Judaism in order for us to be part of the land. There would be a conversion. So he's saying, do right ruling and righteousness. Now let us remember, what is righteousness? Righteous, observing divine laws, upright, virtuous, keeping the commands of Yahuwah, innocent, faultless, whose way of thinking and feeling and acting is holy, conformed to the will of Yah, being innocent and set apart. So set apartness. This is what Yeshua fulfilled. If he leads us, then we will walk as he walked. So we must understand, he's still speaking about righteousness. Nothing has changed. Yeshua became the fullness of righteousness. So, take care of the fatherless or the widow, nor shed innocent blood in this place. And how much blood is being shed in the land on a daily basis. We're not even going to go on a monthly basis, we're on a daily basis. For if you certainly do this word, then there shall enter in by the gates of this house sovereigns sitting on the throne of David, riding on horses in chariots, he and his servants and his people. But if you do not obey these words, I swear by myself. Now imagine if the Father swears by himself, it is done. There's no arguing. I swear by myself, declares Yahuwah, that this house shall become a ruin. So you see, his own house is going to become a ruin. For thus said Yahuwah to the house of the sovereign of Yehudah, you are like Gilad to me, the head of Lebanon, but I shall make you a wilderness and cities which are not inhabited. Now, why did he say Gilad? Because the word Gilad means witness heap. It means a heap of testimony. So he's going to make a testimony, a heap of testimony out of this king, out of the sovereign of Yehudah. And I shall make you a wilderness. So now you're living in your palace, you're living very, very well, but I am going to make you into a wilderness and cities which are not inhabited. So I'm going to make this land a wasteland. And I shall prepare destroyers against you, each with his weapons. And they shall cut down your choice cedars and throw them into the fire. So the Father will allow the enemy to torment us, the tormentors to come and torment us. Why? Because of our wickedness. Remember the tormentors that came against the man that was not willing to forgive the neighbor that owed him that money. He threw him into the prison and he said, the tormentors are going to come and torment you because of his unforgiveness in his own heart. And that is the hardness of heart. So do we have hardness of heart? What is there? And so therefore he sends the tormentors out to torment us, the destroyers. And many nations shall pass by the city, and they shall say to one another, why has Yahuwah done so to this city? So imagine, they become a laughing stock, almost ashamed, because of what has happened to the city. Then they shall say, because they have forsaken the covenant of Yahuwah, their Eloah, and bowed themselves to other mighty ones and served them. So do you remember in Exodus chapter 19? Let's just go read Exodus chapter 19. Do you remember what he says to them about a covenant? And he says, Exodus chapter 19 verses 4, and you have seen what I did to the Mitzrites and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. So he comes up against our enemies. He came up against the enemies of Israel because he's delivering them by his mighty and strong hand. He says, and now, see, that word is the word that you need to underline. Now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant. So see, it's all about a covenant. If you shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a reign of priests and a set-apart nation. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel. So you see, this is what the Father has already spoken. This was the covenant that was made with the children of Eretz Israel. And that's why he's saying, then they shall say, because they have forsaken the covenant of Yahuwah, their Elohim, and bowed themselves to other mighty ones and served them. So you see, we must understand, like I keep saying, let us not be too quick to be hard of heart to say, well, that's not us because we don't have other gods. Really? Really? We have many gods. They just come in different forms. They come in forms that's why we need to look within our hearts and see, what do we put above the Father? What idols are there? Do not weep for the dead, nor mourn for him. Weep bitterly for him who goes away, for he shall never come back, nor see the land of his birth. Now understand. Isn't it interesting? He's saying to them, he shall never come back nor see the land of his birth. Now, how interesting it is. Did the Israelites, did they all enter into the promised land? Because of the stubbornness of their own hearts. Because of the fact that they kept rebelling against the Father in the wilderness. Only 2 of the original, could it have been 2 million, 3 million, we're not 100% sure, that came out of the land of Mitzrayim, of Egypt. Only 2. And they stayed in the wilderness. He did not allow them to enter the land. And this is what we're going to understand tonight. Because once he exiles you, because he will exile you, because you don't want to keep his covenant. How can you be part of his people, be part of his covenant, if you do not keep his covenant? You cannot be part of his covenant people if you don't keep his covenant. Now listen to what he says. For thus said Yahuwah concerning Shalom, son of Yeshayahu, sovereign of Yehudah, who reigned instead of Yoshiyahu, his father who went from his place, he shall never come back. So understand, he's not going to come back to this land. So even though his son is going to go out, he's going to go into exile and he's not going to come back. And he shall die in the place where they have exiled him and not see the land again. And why? Woe to him. Now listen. Woe to him who builds his house without righteousness, and his rooms without right ruling, who uses his neighbor's service without wages and does not give him his wages. Now, there are many people building many houses. There are many people building many kingdoms, but they build their house on a wrong foundation. Do they truly build their house on a foundation of righteousness? So you see, he says, who says, I'm going to build myself a wide house with spacious rooms and cut out windows for it and panel it with cedar and painting it in red. This is all about the lust of the flesh. And this is where he's talking about how this king's son is now built himself his kingdom, and the king has built himself his kingdom, and everything is about me, myself, and I. And what the Father showed me today is he says, you are guilty. Because instead of you teaching your children to build their houses on righteousness, no, you teach them to build their houses and their lives on a system of this world system. So we give them their education so that they can raise up in their education, and then we're so proud of what they achieve. But at the end of the day, did they build their houses on the foundation of righteousness, on the ways and the commands of Abba Yahuwah? No, because what have we been taught? We must become great. And how do we become great? By being able to be seen to be something. And so we achieve by going into this world system, this Babylon system, and the Babylon system gives us all this grandeur. It's going to give us to build ourselves wide houses. So look and see what we do. Our parents didn't have a lot, but they take the little bit that they have to give their children more, so that the children can then have bigger houses, more cars than the parents had, and then they must give their children even more and more. And all we do is we become more and more slaves to the system that we are in. This is what the Father was showing me today. And he said, my child, the people are slaves to a Babylonian system. Now, what do? They have idols of their jobs, they have idols of their cars, they have idols of themselves. Everything is about man being on a throne, because it's what it's all about. But did we really build the foundation of righteousness? So now what happens? See, it just deteriorates, because if one generation that serves the Father that doesn't build, so say for example, there's a generation that serves the Father, but they did not bring up those children in having righteousness and right ruling in their house, those children get a little bit further away until eventually the children's children are completely far away. And this is what the Father was showing me. And he says, this is where we are today. It's all about having to be able to have the lust of the flesh. We go through this life for the lusts of the flesh, and it's all going to shake. And that is why people are bowing to the system, because they're not willing to let go of the lust of the flesh. They're not willing to let go of their jobs or their houses or their cars or their lives, because this is what they have built their foundation on, and they haven't built their foundation on right ruling and righteousness. They've built their foundation on going to build myself a wide house with spacious rooms, cut out windows for it, paneling with cedar painted red. And then our children get lost in the system of Babylon. Do you reign because you enclose yourself in cedar? Did your father eat and drink and do right ruling and righteousness? Then it was well with him. So you see, if the father did righteousness, but he didn't teach his children to do righteousness, then the children go astray, because then the children did not have a foundation. Because we have got other goals. If you think about it, what is the goal when you are a young person? What's the goal? Is really the goal serving the Father wholeheartedly? Or what is the goal? The goal is to be able to achieve, to become somebody, to have a name for yourself, to have the fame, to have all of that for yourself. That is what we have achieved. He defended the cause of the poor and needy. Then it was well. Was this not to know me, declares Yahuwah? So you see, then we achieve our money, we get all this grandeur, and it's still about ourselves. It's not about looking after the poor or the needy, or being about the Father's kingdom. It's still all about me, myself, and I. So when I have achieved everything, it's all about me, and I'm on my throne. This is a hard word tonight. It was a very hard word for me. But your eyes and your heart are only upon your own greedy gain. There you see, he's laid it out very clear. Your eyes and your heart are only upon your own greedy gain, on shedding innocent blood and on oppressing and on doing violence. And this is why brother is going to turn against brother in these last days. Why? Because you see, I am going to kill for what I want. And I'm going to bow down to a system for what I want. So let's go read Revelation chapter 18, so we can see where we are, what is going to come. And he says, and after this, I saw another messenger. Revelation chapter 18 from verses 1 to 3, for verses 1 to 4, 5, verses 1 to 5. And it says, and after this, I saw another messenger coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was lightened from his esteem. And he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babel, the great is fallen, it's fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a haunt of every unclean spirit. So you see, what does Babylon represent? It's representing everything that is a dwelling place of demons. And the demons ride the people. a hunt for every unclean spirit. So these unclean spirits attach themselves to the people, and a haunt for every unclean and hated bird. Because all the nations, now listen to what he says, all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her whoring, and the sovereigns of the earth have committed whoring with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the power of a righteous living. So you see, the merchants, the sovereigns, what did King Solomon do? Why did King Solomon fall? Because King Solomon went after the riches. And then he started, eventually his son went even more greedy than his father. And then started to put the temple taxes upon the people. And then they put the people into slavery. And then what happened to the people? The house was divided. And this is where the house divided then. Then that is when the 10 tribes went north. The house was torn and divided. Because why? Solomon started chasing after the lust of the flesh by having many wives, started chasing after the lust of the flesh in having acquiring much wealth, where it says a king is not to acquire much wealth. And so he acquired all this wealth, all for himself. And what happened to Solomon? He fell. And then from Solomon, it went down to his son, Rehoboam, who started to become even more greedy. The temple was already built. So why would they have to tax the people with temple taxes? No, because we need more wealth for ourselves. So what does it do? More destruction. So let's read this, what it says in Revelation 18 verse 3 in the Amplified. It says, for all the nations have drunk the wine of her passionate unchastity. So you see, of her wrath, of her passionate unchastity. Unchastity, chastity is love. So it's the passionate unchastity. There's no love. And it says, and the rulers and the leaders of the earth have joined with her in committing fornication, idolatry. It's all about idolatry. And then we say, we don't have idols. No, we've got too many idols. More than what they had in those days. And the businessmen of the earth have become rich with the wealth of her excessive luxury and wantedness. So you see, they acquire more and more and more. It's more taxes, it's more this, it's more that, so that the rich can become richer and the poorer can become poorer. And this is where we're living today. That's what it is. This is exactly where we are. No different to what it was then. This is exactly where we are. And so we continue to read in verse 17, and it says, but your eyes and your heart are only upon your own greedy gain, Jeremiah 22:17, only upon your own greedy gain, and on your shedding innocent blood, and on oppression, and on doing violence. Nothing has changed. This is where we are today. We have a bunch of people controlling the world that they have so much, yet the merchants, these businessmen, do not stop until they see you groveling in the dirt, because when is enough enough? When does a wealthy person have enough? When do they finally have enough? Enough is not enough, because they want more and more and more. Therefore, thus said Yahuwah concerning Jehoiakim, son of Yehoshayahu, sovereign of Yehudah, let them not lament for him. Alas, my brother, or alas, my sister, let them not lament for him. Alas, master, or alas, his excellency. So you see, the kings of the earth are going to be judged, just like it says in Revelation. And where he turns around and he says, come out of Babylon, my people. That is why he's telling us now to come out of Babylon. So let me tell you something. If you want to save your life, you're going to lose it. But if you're going to lose your life for his name's sake, you will save it. So if you're going to want to save your life, you're going to lose it. That's why he says in Revelation 18 verses 4, and I heard another voice from the heavens saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive her plagues. Because her sins have piled up to reach the heavens, and the Lord has remembered her unrighteousnesses. So you see, Yahuwah sees her unrighteousnesses. And this is where we are. He shall be buried. We go back to Revelation 22:19. He shall be buried, the burial place of a donkey, dragged and thrown outside the gates of Jerusalem. Go up to Lebanon and cry out. Lift up your voice to Bashan and cry from Abarim, for all your lovers are destroyed. You see, all your lovers are going to be destroyed. Everything that we've put our trust and our faith in, that this world has to give us, is going to be destroyed. It's going to shake everything. I have spoken to you in your ears, but you said, I do not listen. This has been your way from your youth, for you did not obey my voice. So you see, we are supposed to train up a child in the way that he used to go in Yahuwah, so that he may never depart from him. So why did Solomon depart from the father? Because David was supposed to have trained him up in only serving the ways of the father. But Solomon was given a gift. He was given the gift of wisdom. But with that wisdom came a destruction, where he acquired much wealth and did what the father did not require of him, because a king was not to acquire much wealth. And so I think it's in Deuteronomy chapter 17 that he turns around, and where you see the order for a king, and a king was not to acquire much wealth. And it says, here, let's look and see. Deuteronomy chapter 17 from verses 15, and it says, you shall certainly set a sovereign over you, whom Yahuwah your Lua has chosen, whom Yahuwah your Lua shall choose. Set a sovereign over you from among your brothers. You are not allowed to set a foreigner over you who is not your brother. Only he is not to increase horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Mitzrayim, to increase horses, for Yahuwah has said to you, do not return that way again. And he is not to increase wives for himself, lest his heart be turned away, nor is he to greatly increase silver and gold for himself. That is what a sovereign is supposed to do. But what did the sovereign do? What did Solomon do? Solomon did not read the Torah because he had so much wisdom. He didn't have a prophet speaking into his life to correct him. And it shall be that when he sits on the throne of the reign, that he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book from the one before the priests, the Levites. He was supposed to write this Torah out so that it could be before his eyes, so that he could remember it, so that it could be before him, so that he would know what to do with it. So his heart is not lifted up above his brothers, and so as not to turn aside from the command, right or left, so that he prolongs his days in his reign, and he and his children, and in the midst of Israel. So do you see where he goes wrong? He doesn't do that. So this is what happens. I have spoken to you in ease, but you said, I do not listen. This has been your way from your youth, for you did not obey my voice. This is what he's speaking now in verse 21 of Jeremiah 22. Let all your shepherds be devoured by the wind, and your lovers go into captivity. Then you shall be ashamed and humiliated for all your evil. And this is what's going to happen. Priest and prophet and shepherd alike is all going to fall. That is continued to preach a message that's telling the people to acquire more, as opposed to be able to come to a place of becoming more set apart, more righteous, more right ruling before the Father. You who dwell in Lebanon, being nested in your cedars, how you shall groan when pains come upon you, like pains of a woman giving birth. Now, doesn't that sound like Matthew chapter 24, when Yeshua says there's going to be the birth pains that's going to come upon the earth, the birth pains that's going to come when the pestilence and the disease and the earthquakes, all spoken of in Matthew chapter 24, the birth pains that the earth is going to go through. So do you see the lining up of Jeremiah and these last days? As I live, declares Yahuwah, though Konyahu, son of Yehoiakim, sovereign of Yehudah, were the signet of my right hand, I would still pull him off from there. And I shall give you into the hand of those who seek your life, into the hand of those who face you fear, of those whose face you fear, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, and the hand of the Kasdim, the Chaldeans. So you see, he will hand us over to our destroyers. He will hand us over to our enemies. And he says, and I shall hurl you out, and your mother who bore you into another land where you were not born, and there you shall die. But they shall not return to the land to which their being yearns to return. So you see, even though they're going to yearn to return, they are not going to return. So that generation that's going to go in there, remember, a generation went in there for 70 years. So all those, only the little children might have been those that were maybe born there that were going to return, because for 70 years they were going to be in exile. So they were not going to return to the land because they were in exile for 70 years. Now, do you understand why I say to you, do you see the Israelites? The Israelites did not enter into the promised land because they were not walking in Father's obedience, righteous ways, according to his commands and his precepts that he gave them. He wanted a people that would be set apart unto him. And now what makes us think that if we're not going to keep his covenant and we're not going to keep his ways, that we will be those that will reign and rule with him in the millennial reign? So we must understand what he's saying. Is this man, Konyahu, a despised broken pot or an undesirable vessel? Why are they hurled out, he and his descendants, and cast into a land which they do not know? So you see, there's going to be many that are going to be cast out, just like Israel stayed in the wilderness, went around the mountain 40 years. They stayed in the wilderness because they would not listen. Now listen to what he says in verse 29. O land, land, land. 3 times he speaks, O land, land, land. Hear the word of Yahuwah. O land, O people, O people, O people, hear the word of Yahuwah. Yahuwah is speaking. Yahuwah is warning. Yahuwah is warning his people. Thus says Yahuwah, write this man down as childless, a strong man who is not to prosper in his days, for none of his descendants shall prosper, sitting on the throne of David or rule anymore in Yehudah. So you see, he's the pot that's going to be broken into pieces, because he's not a pot that is willing to be melted down, to be shaped, to be formed, to allow the Father to have his way in him. Instead, he's stiffened, he's hard-hearted, stiff-necked, rebellious, stubborn, and he's going to be broken in pieces, and he will not enter into the land. And he will go into exile where he will be destroyed. May Abba bless you all, beloveds of the King. Shalom, shalom.